Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another roadmap. Hold on, I might have. I think I've got too many sound things going on. Hold on, there we go. Right. Evening, Matt. How you doing?
I am very good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. In the last roadmap, I had some audio issues going on in the sense that I was apparently too loud, and Adam was a little bit too quiet. So if that's the case again tonight, let me know. I have had a tinker around with the settings, so you should be louder than, well, we should be about the
Adam's
same
going to be
volume.
really quiet, it has to be said. If Adam is very loud at this point, this is a problem, yeah?
Well, if we can hear Adam tonight, we've really done something wrong.
Yeah.
Now, let's actually talk about the fact that you're on this roadmap stream tonight, Matt, and that's not very normal. Normally it's Adam, especially when we're talking about Preservation Crew as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we need to have a very frank conversation about a couple of big things that have been on the community's mind.
We do. There's been some a lack of progress and some things, and we need to talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll have seen the previous roadmap, but obviously it left some players feeling quite frustrated because we've kind of been going around in circles and we've been talking about the same things over and over, and like you said, there's been no progress. So hopefully tonight we'll be able to answer some more questions, clear some things up, and get some answers at the very least about what's been going on. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a train boy and others. I'm smiling like this just because Natalie's been grilling me square for the entire of the last week. So
yeah, actually, let's.
What I'm kind of hoping is that this is going to be at least a dial down in the grilling a little bit. I mean, it's completely appropriate, and I'm not complaining. But wow.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. So since the previous roadmap, and obviously the community expressed their feelings, how much have I been harassing you?
How much haven't you? And we talk multiple times a day, and about all sorts of different things, but this topic comes up at least once a day with so what's new?
Yeah.
How are you going to make me happy, Matt?
Yeah.
So it's full marks to the community team. They are fighting your corner, and to be fair, as I want that to, I'm not complaining. But no, it's if I see people saying that the community team are being soft on the dev studio, trust me, they're not.
I think these days I'll call you and you get a little twitch because I'm about to ask you about something.
It's like, oh, this is Matt, have you got 5? No. I'm eating.
Now, before we get into the really big Pres Crew stuff, which is obviously going to be the core of what we're talking about tonight, should we touch on some of the stuff that has been changed on the roadmap this week, which is obviously Luzern Sursee was announced today.
Yes.
Have you seen the pictures? What do you think?
Looks amazing, doesn't it? I mean, it's the flirt, so it's the first time we've seen that. So a fairly well-known shape these days, and particularly in railways. So it's good to see that coming in, and the little play I've had of it so far, gotta say, that looks and sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And they talk about in the release announcement there about ETCS as well, the European Train Control System. And that's something people have been asking about a lot as well. So it's there's lots of really cool stuff to look forward to on that route. So keen to see what Rivet do. They're kind of the masters of the Swiss and Austrian and so forth. So should be cool.
One thing I will ask you about that is actually there's been some skepticism from the community with Rivet. Would you say that that's just or not with this route so far?
I don't really want to talk to the route because at the moment the version of the route I'm seeing is not in a place where I can give a bit of feedback, and it's probably not appropriate to at this point anyway.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that the process that we've been following currently with Skyhook on Horseshoe Curve, and in the process of now with Revit as well, is trying to provide the third-party developers with more support, advice, feedback. There's a lot more discussions going on in the beta Discord than there have been in the past. So it's kind of, the framework is there to provide great feedback, and there is a keenness from all the third parties to react to that feedback. It's, I'm positive, I'm hyped, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
That's great. It's great to hear. So, let's talk Preservation Crew. That is the other thing that has changed on the roadmap this week, which is obviously the order in which we expect these updates to come out is now in the order of release. So what's at the top is what we think is going to come out. This has changed since 2 weeks ago, after obviously the many discussions we've had. We've had discussions internally about what we think is practical to get it out within a certain amount of time. And I think we've also we've had a look at the community feedback to see what everybody's opinions was on the best way to order that. And so I think the order we've come to at the moment is the best order we could think of.
But one of the things that I will say just on that is don't expect it to necessarily stay still. If we're ready to release a route that's further down the list, then we won't hold it back until it's in that particular slot order. So it's not all going to come out at once. But we're also not going. If something is ready out of order, then we're not going to.
Yeah, the way I've seen it at the moment. So obviously we've got everything in a spreadsheet in case anybody's wondering. The first half of the spreadsheet is probably the first half of the list is most likely to stay where it is. Yep. The second half is likely that could move as and when that gets through testing. But let's go straight into the tough questions, shall we, Matt? Which is, obviously, I mentioned testing. We've talked about how testing has been a blocker for these updates coming out. And we talked to Adam about it, and we know that the Preservation Crew are really a bit fed up of these not being released. The players are fed up of it not being released. Can we talk about how this problem started with QA in the first place? Like, how did we get in this situation where we can't release this content?
So, I mean, the underlying issue really starts because of a naivety on everyone's part, really. So we went into it with the plan for when fixes are ready, we'll find a slot and we'll release it.
Yeah.
And the reality is that actually that doesn't work. It's got to be planned much more carefully than that. And there also then has to be a much bigger push to get things out. And what happens is that with the, and I'm going to talk about this as we go further on, about the concept of, we talked about the phrase like slot and so forth.
Yes.
And finding an appropriate window to release things and why those things then don't turn up. So there's basically, we got into this problem with not fully appreciating how things would pan out, and the fact that we would end up pushing the fixes further and further down the road for various reasons, which all seem real perfectly reasonable at the time, and then you look back 6 months later and you're like, hang on a minute, what's going on? What we need to think about there is it's not just, and this is a sort of a theme you're going to hear throughout, is not just about fixing this situation, but making sure it doesn't happen again.
Now,
so that we build this in.
Before this, we'd been told that the problem with the updates was not a QA problem, but it was in fact a release slot problem, and that's what was hindering it coming out. And now we're being told it's a QA problem. What is it? Which is it? Is it one of them, or is it the other one, or are we changing our minds as we go? I mean, it can seem like we're trying to deceive the players if we keep changing our answer.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is the problem here, is that it's a really complex issue, and part of that is because of this oversimplification of the term slot, amongst other things. So just one thing to bear in mind is we're now delivering on 7 platforms, and we need to keep those platforms in sync for all sorts of very good reasons. They need to kind of be kept in sync, and so So essentially, the preserve crew do their work. Once they've done their work, the first obstacle is getting that into a build and then into QA for the first round of testing. So held up by QA puts the I'm going to use the word blame, and I don't mean
Okay.
it in that way, but puts the pressure on QA and their job is prioritized. So this is the first area here is looking at how do we change that prioritization essentially. So that's where this first failing is prioritization into QA and making sure that things don't just get pushed and pushed and pushed. So we want to make sure that we can get things in for that first round of testing once they've been done. Now in this particular case, one of the problems we've had, and I dislike leaning on COVID as a thing,
Yeah.
because we should be working around it, but genuinely in this instance we do use outsource agencies in Romania and India to support us to supply a lot of QA resource, and they've actually been very heavily hit, as I'm sure everyone is aware, and to where we're getting maybe in some cases 30% of the resource that we were expecting to be able to get to do testing. That has an impact. There's no getting around that. So we have to deal with that. However, what we're looking at doing is we're restructuring some of the way that QA are working, and also broadening how we look at the where we get our outsourcing from, so that we can diversify that and reduce the risk of that happening in the future. So that's the first area, and where some of the initial this QA bottleneck has appeared. And that is the first of the things. So sometimes when the phrase is getting a release slot comes up, actually that encompasses everything from the end of when dev happens through QA into releasing it out. So it's a bit all encompassing. So some phrases are very imprecise, which is what leads to some of the confusion and the misunderstanding there. So inside this, once preserve crew have done their work, it's got to get into QA. That's one of the problems, and that's some of the reason why those problems have been there, and some of the things that we're looking at doing to try and improve that. And we're going to keep iterating on that, because that helps everything. If we can make QA run more smoothly, then everything benefits from that stuff, as well as improving quality and so on and so forth. Once QA have completed their testing, it needs to go back to preserve crew, because the chances of them coming out in the first instance and not finding a single thing wrong is pretty unlikely. So it goes back into preserve crew, and then those issues are fixed, and then it goes back into QA again. And of course, if you haven't solved the first QA problem, you're back into the queue that doesn't get dealt with, and so that you are then back up into there. Now the difference is, instead of testing 100 fixes, you're testing 3 or 4. So generally it will be in QA for almost moments before it comes out and everything is okay. So once you've got a QA'd build, you then need to get it through platform certification and release. So this is where we package the builds up. They get uploaded to all the different 7 platforms. They then do all of their certification tests. Now, in the case of Steam, there's next to nothing, but Microsoft, Sony, and even Epic. Epic in the case is a very lightweight test, but Microsoft and Sony have got something slightly bigger that they do. So those things have to go through, and we need to get them up. So there's some issues there. Now, one of the challenges of that happens there is that it takes a varying amount of time to get something through certification. And like I said, there also has to be some degree of synchronization between all the platforms. So it's everything is running at the slowest platform speed, essentially. And because only one thing can be in that point at one time. So when you put something in for for release certification, it waits until the next thing comes out. Now, ideally, what happens is the next things are in QA. So it's not like everybody down tools while things are in certification. But what it does is it means that only you've got this one thing can happen at a time on its way out to release. And sometimes what's happening is that the speed that things can come out of QA is blurring that, and that's making that really difficult, and it means it needs to be really carefully managed. And again, that's one of the areas where we've not done as well as we could do in some of that stuff. So
I'm going to ask you to go through some of that again in a moment, because I think it's quite technical, and I think we might have lost a few people there, especially once we start talking about certification and that kind of thing. But the first thing I'm going to ask you is, obviously, you mentioned that the stuff goes through a first pass in QA.
Hmm.
And Londo Spark in the chat has asked, once it's gone through round 1 of QA, let's say hypothetically it fails, how long does it then take for it to get another slot in QA? Because I think this is definitely a concern that the players have at the moment, which is that the preservation stuff does not take priority. So if it's finally found its way into that slot, it's finally got the QA time it needs, and then it fails, I think there's a concern that there would then be another large wait before it to go round its second pass.
So because the second pass is a much smaller one, its priority is almost less relevant, because QA almost, if you've got to test 5 things and just make sure that it's done, that's kind of someone is waiting for a build to install in a console. They can do those 5 checks on Steam, and it becomes something you can do almost transparently. So I'm kind of less worried about the second pass. There is still the possibility of it getting held up. At the moment, that's certainly still the case, because it still goes into the QA of things to do, list of things to do. But scheduling time for 100, 200 bug fixes to be tested by half a dozen or a dozen people is very different to testing 5 things one person. So it becomes much easier to get. So I'm less worried about the second pass, but that's not to say I'm complacent about it. So just on the topic of the ones that we've already got in the list, a bunch of them have now have gone through their first QA, and so they're now back with the Preserve crew to go through any of the issues that have happened there. So there has been quite a significant amount of progress in that front. And to clear the backlog that we've got at the moment, we are prioritizing this stuff. So in terms of the priority, we have shifted QA's priority and said, no, we need this stuff done. So they've already gone through, like I said, you talked about the first half of that list. The reason that first half of the list is likely to stay the way it is because they've all now gone through their first pass of QA. And they've all come back with a small number of issues, and Adam's team will then go through, clear those off, and it'll be put back in for QA, which should be a much quicker process.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at with those.
Can we go back to Sir? I think you definitely lost. Well, you lost me when you were talking about Sir. So if you've lost me, I'm sure you've lost some other people. Try and explain that in layman's terms, if you can, please, Matt.
So the way that platforms like Xbox and certain PlayStation work is, in order to make sure that the game the content that's put out will work and comply with the platform rules. So there's a technical term for it called TRCs and other things. There's a set of rules that we have to adhere to in terms of how the game will behave. For example, just to pick some random things out of the air, if you just yank the cord for your controller, if you yank the mains cord out the back, pull the network cable out, reboot the machine, all these kinds of things, log in as your account on a different profile, or the battery runs out on your controller, all these things. So there are a set of rules, and it's quite a comprehensive set of rules that cover all sorts of things that we have to adhere to. Process of certification essentially is we give Microsoft the content, and then they go away and test it against their own set of rules and say, right, this game is fitting within the way that we want an Xbox game a game on the Xbox to look and work. They don't dictate whether or not it's fun. They don't dictate whether or not, is it the right choice of route, or should it have been longer? That's not what they're interested in. What they're interested in is, does it work? Is it reliable? And do they experience any issues with it? And they report all that stuff back, and either we'll get a failures, certification failure report, and that'll tell us things which we have to get fixed before we submit again, or the thing will come back and say it's all passed. Now, generally,
go on.
Sorry.
I was going to say, could you give us an example of how this process has worked before? So when you said that something could still be in QA and something could be in cert at the same time, could you give us an example of a route that's been in cert while something else has been in QA?
I mean, at the moment, we've had a bunch of stuff all the stuff from the Preserve crew have been running around QA. While we've had expansion pack and Creators Club certs going on.
Okay.
So one after the other and in different orders, but they sort of like we've done an expansion pack. I think we're on our second Creators Club cert, and which we're expecting 3 certs actually for the Creators Club stuff, because it's a network feature. It's inherently likely to cause problems, and so Sony want to make, and Microsoft want to make sure that it has behaves well. So yeah, there's lots of concurrent. Same as in addition to that, dev is going on as well, obviously.
So look, we've spoken about the priority of the preservation crew slightly there, but isn't this problem just going to keep happening, especially if we don't make the preservation stuff a priority? Because these things this could happen again in another 12 months because we haven't made it a priority. It's a pattern that could keep happening.
So it's not just about making it a priority, because at the end of the day, if you don't solve some of the underlying issues, priority doesn't necessarily fix all things. Now, it is a problem. It hasn't been understood correctly in terms of, once you delay, if you keep delaying stuff, what it should do is it bump up in priority, so that, after it's been bumped a couple of times, there's alarm bells going off everywhere, and people are saying, we can't keep delaying it. And that doesn't happen. It's just always the next thing that can be bumped because we've got other things that need to be dealt with. And so that needs fixing, and that's fine. But there will always be an element of that certain thing. There is always going to be a priority there. What we need to do is make it to where we can work more efficiently and work more easily. One of the challenges is that it's quite a manual process at the moment, the way that we integrate changes into builds. So a developer will make some change on their local machine, and they will submit that into our system, and then there are then processes by which those changes then get pulled into various builds onto the various platforms, and it's all pretty manual at the moment. And one of the challenges there is with a manual process, things can go wrong. Which means that you would feel like you need a bit more time to slow down, make sure you're doing it right. I haven't got time for that. I'll do these other things, and that's where some of the problem starts to creep in. So one of the things we're doing there is we're making that whole process semi-automatic, which means that while it's still a person directing the process, what will happen is that person will say, I want these things, and it'll all automatically get built simultaneously in all platforms, and that should make it to where it becomes much simpler, much easier and quicker to take changes in, and do it I use the word safe. Obviously when talking about people safety, what we want is build safety, so we want to make sure that those things are going in correctly and equivalently on all platforms, and nothing gets missed, because some of the times we've had behavior which is different on different platforms, and that's an example where a change has been missed because it's really easy to do. So this is why we want the automatic system to try and resolve that process. Now once we get to that, then it becomes much easier and much quicker, which means that you go through things faster, you can get things out faster. The topic of prioritization then becomes less of an issue.
Can you understand why at this point, and after so many streams and such a delay releasing these updates, it does feel a bit like we're giving excuses, we're giving promises that we're not going to keep, we're not actually making any changes because the stuff still hasn't been released, and we are starting to look a bit bad, aren't we, Matt?
Totally, and I understand it and I share it. I mean, I play the game, and what's worse is I know the fixes that are waiting to come out, and I want to play those fixes as well. So I'm right with you. There is, it's very easy to say there's more going on that needs to be dealt with, but one of the key things that's in the back of my mind is I don't just want to fix it for this. I don't want it happening ever again.
Yeah.
And so it'd be very easy to just say, right, everybody down tools, get this stuff out. And then it would be definitely happening again in 12 months' time. What I actually want is for everybody to almost down tools. Can we just fix the processes a bit? Now, as it happens, I've not needed to say anything like that because everybody in the dev team is kind of passionate about getting this stuff fixed. And so, this is where fixes to the build process and the looking at how QA are organizing things, those things are happening anyway. As a result of the fact that everyone's looking at this going, how the heck did we get here? And so there's been lots of self-reflection, realizing this is wrong. Now, it's it's not good that we've got to where we are.
No.
But the key thing for me, like I said, is we need to get this backlog done, but also we need to be in a better place for going forwards, because otherwise I'm just going to be here in 12 months' time having the same stream.
Yeah, because I think we'd get asked why do we do this work if we have no plan to release it. Yeah. So when obviously you're now executive producer, so that's giving you a fair bit of power, should we say? But what are you doing as executive producer at the moment to actually make things better yourself? Because what are you doing with that power you've got?
So I'm working with all the teams and making sure that your voices are heard in there. Your pain is being felt there, because there's a level of abstraction. So again, this is one of the things where you are really helping us, Nat, because the team generally don't look at the forums. They do to some extent, but they don't much, which means that you could isolate yourself. You could put yourself into a nice cuddly duvet and not realize the pain that everybody's feeling that's on the coalface using the product. And I look at the forums a lot. You look at the forums. You come and tell me, and I know you come and talk to the other team members as well, as do I. And so I kind of just want to say, no, guys, this is really hurting people. They need to see these fixes. This isn't just a fix. This is, I can now finish this scenario. I can now get this achievement. Oh, the game has stopped crashing. This is, big for someone who's playing the game. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that the impact of this stuff is felt, because then everybody is on board with, well, yeah, obviously that needs fixing then. Oh, we need to make sure that goes out. Crikey. So I want to make sure that's done. And I'm similarly, like I said, I'm really passionate that we don't just down tools, get this lot out, move on like we think we fixed the problem. We have to fix the problem. So I'm looking at what the teams are doing in terms of like build and QA and so forth. And without, like I said, a lot of this stuff is, I don't want to take credit where it's not due, because the build teams are looking at the process independently. They didn't need me to come along. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at what they're doing and trying to keep a picture of, okay, is this going to actually fix the problem? Do I need to nudge things in a different direction? And actually, we're heading in a really good direction. It's just taking a bit of time to get there, and that's not what anybody wants to hear.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions from the chat. So Londo and Liam Eds have both asked very similar questions, which is, are we any better now than where we were 12 months ago? Because it currently doesn't feel that way for a lot of the players.
No, we're probably not, realistically. Yeah. There's more happening, but I don't think we're necessarily better at it. But that was an example of, I think, the last time we had this problem, we down tools, fixed the problem, and moved on, rather
Didn't fix
than
the processes,
fixing the problem.
Yeah. So the plan this time, obviously we've got the same problem. You see, this is the other thing. We often say, if we make a mistake internally, we don't make the same mistake again, but clearly we have.
Yes. And I can't promise we won't make a mistake.
Yeah.
All I can do is do my best to try and learn from the lessons of where we are, and work with the team to try and improve that. So I'm going to do my best, and we'll see where we are, and I expect to be held accountable.
Yep. I'll be holding you accountable, don't you worry.
I know you will.
Yeah, so obviously we're still having some more questions from the chat. You briefly mentioned crashes. Can we actually talk about that for a minute? I think we can't deny that there have been quite a lot of crashes lately that players have experienced. It's been very unenjoyable for them. There's been a lot of people lately that have just been having performance issues, full stop. We recently posted a thread on forums, actually, because you are investigating crashes. But can you actually talk a bit more about that? What is going on there, and why did that thread appear out of nowhere?
Yeah, so, I mean, the first thing is no crash is acceptable. There is no case where a crash is a valid thing to happen, ever. So anytime the game crashes, then we need to understand it. And internally, crashes are given the highest priority. But one of the biggest problems we have with crashes is trying to reproduce it. Until we can reproduce the crash, it's really difficult to actually substantively prove you've fixed it or even that you've understood the problem. Sometimes you can sort of see, oh, it looks like from the crash dump files that or the log file that we got, this might have been happening. So I put a bit of bracing in that area of the code, and then we'll call that fixed and see if it comes up. And that's just a really unsatisfying solution that almost always means that it still crashes, possibly in a different way, and may even be worse, because you're firing blind.
Yeah.
So if we can reproduce the crash internally in the dev environment, then in almost all cases, we can come to a solution we can be confident with, and reasonably quickly. In fact, we know, because once the team can reproduce the crash, they can almost look at it and go, "Oh, that's why it went wrong."
Yep.
And then they can see the line of code and they can reproduce it. And then when they've got a test fix in, they can reproduce it, go through that sequence again and validate they've actually fixed the problem. So the problem there has been, like I said, have been trying to reproduce it. And actually, the engineering team and the QA teams have both been going through various customer reports of crashes and not having any luck reproducing them, which is immensely frustrating. You look at some of the reports, and it's like, anytime I drive from A to B, it always crashes. Go and watch someone in QA drive from A to B, 100% reliable. And they've said, and we've tried this on different platforms and we can't make it crash. It's just like, okay. Generally, what happens there is that it's not all of A to B that causes the problem. So what we've had a couple of instances of in the past, as an example, is I drive from A to B. Anytime I do it, it doesn't work. So we drive from A to B, and as it happens, we choose a different set of A to B services as our test. So we maybe choose them at 5 p.m. and the one that the testers have been using have not included the 5 p.m. service. And in one instance, it was the one that we were testing was the only one that worked.
Can we talk about the Liam's actually said, is this why you've not been able to stop Sam sending trains into space? You've been unable to reproduce the same problems.
So we actually that's not crashing. So the train's into space, and you'll remember we on the Bakerloo 4-up challenge, Sam and I both derailed our trains.
Yeah.
And other people I know have had derailleurs on the 387 on London Commuter, and a number of people. So I've been talking to people actually on the forum about the derailment issue as well, and I've passed all the evidence on that one that I've been given. So big thank you to everyone who's been helping me with that. We think we have an idea on that one, in that what we think is happening is that the axle's bouncing, and it's bouncing and it bounces a little bit too high, and it's immediately classed as derailed, even though it's nowhere near derailing. But at the moment, that's a guess, an educated guess from the team, and they're still looking at what they wanted. What they need to be able to do is to repro it while they've got all the physics debugging turned on, and then stop it at that moment and go and have a look and see what happened. And that's a little bit complicated setup, but it's on their list to do. So we're making some progress in understanding it, and that one's like so many is a ticket in the system that engineering are looking at. So that's that one, and we think that's probably when Sam sent trains into space. It's just another example of that happening.
Now, obviously, we're laughing and joking about Sam sending them into space because that's quite a funny situation, but it's not funny if you've been playing for a long time and your game crashes. That is incredibly frustrating to have happen. Yeah. So I'm assuming this is a high priority to fix because it is so disruptive to everyone's gameplay when that happens.
Well, it weakens your, do I even want to start playing a 1 hour scenario if I'm not sure I'll get to the end of it?
Exactly.
I won't bother even starting. And it's just like the minute you start going down that route, you stop playing the game.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. This is why crashes is such a bad thing. That's different to some of the other bugs that are in the game, which might be equally bad in terms of the experience, like red lights, for example. But crash is just one of those things that they are just such a fundamental error that they just should not be there. I know the engineering team are really adamant about that. But even on our internal tools, if we do something and it causes a crash, they're honest to say, get us the crash dump so we can make it not do that again, because you're losing work, you're losing time, and it doesn't even matter if you had the wrong data in there, it still shouldn't crash. It's should give you an error message. So they're really keen on us getting that. So this is why I started the thread up on the forums to say, folks, we need to have these crashes from people. We need as much steps to repro it as
Don't you
possible.
find videos incredibly useful?
Videos are incredibly useful because they include every piece of information as long as you keep the HUD on. Yeah, so one of the things, when you're going to record a video, do it from the menu and keep the HUD on, because I know a number of people have sent me bug reports, and they're from the minute you're in the train with the HUD off, because that's obviously how they prefer to play. But then I can't see what the game was thinking.
Yep.
Because the HUD can tell me more information about what the game was thinking at a particular point, which might relate to what's going on. Generally not so important on crashes, because again, what I want to know is exactly what's going on. So this is where I would find out in a video exactly what service you're playing, exactly how you played it. Oh, you were driving a lot faster than I did when I tested that. Maybe I'll try that. Now you might just be, that's how I play it. So you wouldn't think to say, this is how I drove it, and these were the checkpoint times I got to various things. Whereas with a video, we can see all that stuff.
Yeah.
We can also see, before that crashed, about 5 minutes before it crashed, it wobbled.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. And you might even have just thought, bloody bloomin' game.
How good does the quality of video need to be? Does it need to be a 4K video, or would somebody recording it from their phone be sufficient? As long as it was clear.
As long as it's clear, it doesn't really matter. It certainly doesn't need to be 4K. As long as we can see what's going on, that's enough, really. And if you don't include the menu, then make sure you include maybe some screenshots of the menu, or make sure you tell us exactly. The key thing is, which service were you running? What weather did you pick? All of those settings from the menu, because you never know which one is the one that might allow us to reproduce it, or if we get it different to you, actually make it to where it runs flawlessly for us. And that's one of the worst things, is so many times we go to reproduce a bug. Bearing in mind the game has been played a lot in QA, and they've not reported crashes, or if they have, those crashes have been resolved. So you're experiencing crashes that have gone outside of what they've tested, and we need to update our tests to find out why people are seeing these crashes, so that we don't release like that in future. But we need to get that information. So the more we can get, the better. And whether you do a in-game recording on the console, because some consoles can do that, or hold your phone up to it, or you can get these little cheap USB capture things that you can use. However is easiest for you, get us the information so that we can record. We can try and see what's going on, because we do see a lot more from the videos.
Now, obviously, we've just touched on crashes there, but that is not the only problem players are experiencing at the moment. Hold on, let me try that sentence again.
Sorry, one before. There's Happy Day 1 2 3 4 4 just said, are these automated crash reports on consoles helpful? Yes. If you get the opportunity to upload to report your crashes back up to the console, do that. For example, one area that helped us immensely, we saw a significant uptick in crashes. So we get a report on dashboard on like, say for example on Sony backend, it's on all of them, but we get a dashboard, so we can see suddenly there are 3,000 crashes of a particular type, and we can go in and look at all of those 3 crashes. They've auto classified them for us, and the screenshot associated with each crash, and we noticed that all of these crashes that were coming up at the top of the list had the same screenshot, and they were all when you were in Brighton Station. Yeah. And when I looked at the time of day, because a lot of them had the HUD on, we realised it was this first scenario or service that arrived with the Gatwick Express train into Brighton. And that was how we were able to identify and repro that, just like that, because it's exactly what we needed to be able to repro it. So if you get, and we fixed it, that bug has been fixed now, by the way. So that is... if you get the opportunity to share the crashes, do so. Steam, if you're on Windows platforms, then what you do there is you look for your crash folder, and I will let forum post explain where you find that.
Yes,
and you just need to zip that up and send it over. In fact, in the crash report forum thread, it's in there 2 or 3 times from not just myself but others that have said, here's how you do
If you provide me with those steps after this stream, Matt, I will include them in the first page on that thread.
Yep, absolutely.
So, like I was about to say, the Crashes aren't the only problem that's going on at the moment. Obviously, there are other long-term issues that have been impacting everybody's experience. I'm going to use the quotes. The state of the game isn't where we would really like it. When we look at the fact that PlayStation 5 users have been having a really horrible time of things lately. There are issues with Rush Hour, the performance on Rush Hour. Let's use save game functionality as an example of something that isn't working the way we would like. What is being done to improve this? Because I think any one of those problems by themselves would be impactful, but the fact that we've got so many big problems, the players are rightfully frustrated.
Yeah, so in and amongst looking at the crashes, the engineering, because there's just rubbish performance. Like when we launched Sherman Hill, it had quite bad performance in some areas. Just that can be damaging to the experience as well. So the team have been looking through that. They're looking through ongoing cause of crashes and so on and so forth. So there is a list to go through on there. So well, for example, there was and this was actually called out. The symptoms of which were called out on the crash thread. Someone was saying that they saw on their PC while driving the Dosto that the memory usage would climb slowly and then suddenly escalate and then crash. By watching memory usage as they were driving. And just coincidentally, within a couple of days prior to that, one of the engineers said he was having a play with it and realized there was a massive memory leak on the Dostos, on the cab car, this is the Dresden Reeser and Turanda Ramp Dostos. Basically, every time you went away from the cab, so external view, internal view, the screens where they turned off and turned on again, because they turn off for performance reason when you're away from them, and then when you're near them again they turn on so you can see them. That process was causing a small memory leak. And if you were in and out of the cab all the time, that memory leak escalated to the point that eventually it just spiraled out of control and caused a crash.
So have you been able to fix that?
Yes. So that's one of the fixes. So a test fix has gone in for that, and that's working, going through the process at the moment. So I don't know where that one is. I still need to follow up with the team on where that one is, but we have a fix for that now as well. And similarly, with the engineering team have been looking at the rampant grass on Sherman Hill. Where a number of people have identified that if you're on PC at least, you can go into the engine ini file, and if you dial the grass settings down to like a quarter, then the performance comes right back up. So it's like, okay, because it makes no visual difference, but all of a sudden the performance comes right back up. So we've got someone who's been looking into that to work out why that is and to fix it. And then another instance on Sherman Hill of performance which we have already fixed, but it's not gone out yet, is that we've got like these asset blocks which are for built up areas and so on and so forth, and they were actually consuming a significant amount of processing time, even if they were tiny in the distance. And there's quite a few of them. So again, they've been rebuilt to be virtually free. They're working properly. The static scenery should consume virtually no resources. So, there's a lot of ongoing work going on at the moment. We're looking at things like this and going through the backlog of challenges. And so, you should start seeing some of this stuff coming out sooner rather than later. So, things like. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, no, obviously I've mentioned a couple of really big issues there. And Rudolph in the chat has asked, do we have clear priorities for those issues? Because how do we go through the list? How do we determine what we tackle next? If we've got, let's say we've got 5, as an example now, we've got 5 really big problems, which one do we tackle first?
So, I mean, we go to, so sometimes, that's going to be down to, if you've got 5 really big problems, it depends what you call by a really big problem, because if it's a really huge issue facing the customers, but relatively easy to fix, you do that first. Yeah. Even if it's the 5th highest on the community's list, if it's the one you can fix today, you do it. If the other 4 are going to take months to do. But you also then we will understand from input from the community team. They you and the rest of the community team provide us with the pain factors on these issues.
Yes, I do.
You do, and you make sure I share that pain factor. It's fine, but no, that doesn't. Again, not complaining. And it's, so we understand, where these things are hurting the players, but then we look at them in terms of and where they are in the game. It's, yes, that one is going to be a job to fix, but it's going to have tendrils all over all sorts of things, which are going to mean that potentially we introduce even more problems.
Yep.
Then we need to be really careful about that, and maybe that gets like, well, we're planning on overhauling this system anyway, we'll fix that bug alongside that. That kind of thing. So it's complex. It's not just a put them in order, take the first one off the list and get on with it. There's a degree of that, but there's more to it than that. So that, what I don't want to do is have a 5-minute fix sat behind a 3-month fix.
Yeah. Now, a couple of those big issues I also mentioned include the PlayStation 5 the problems with PlayStation 5, and I think it's been a while since we spoke about them. I think the last time we spoke about it, we put that thread on the forums explaining what our plan was with that. Has there been any progress, and where are we at with that in terms of getting it fixed?
I mean, there's constant progress on it. I mean, there's an engineer full-time assigned to the DLC issue, so we got to the point that we'd done the prototype. We did a test integration into the game, and basically it didn't work the way we wanted it to. So back to the drawing board a little bit.
Yeah.
And fundamentally it's still going to outside work similarly to what we've talked about, but the nitty-gritty detail of how it does it internally are going to be better structured and work more robustly. It's like we could have gone with what we had, but then it would have been so easy to fall down holes where it didn't quite work, or the DLC was expected to be there and it wasn't there. Things like that. It just wasn't quite the right way of doing it. So what this new approach will prevent that from happening. So this is a more robust way of doing it. So by more carefully reviewing, this is preventing bugs from happening.
Are you able to provide any insight into what that's going to look like yet?
So actually, the way I was hoping to get a briefing of this from the engineer doing it in terms of exactly what the detail is, so I could talk more concretely about it. But he's off sick at the moment, unfortunately. However, from what I understand, essentially, it's going to make the vast majority of the process virtually transparent. So the game will know what all of the packages have got, and it will know when to mount and unmount things automatically. It won't be one of the things with the way we were going before. We talked about the 2 phases, for example, was that in phase 1 you wouldn't be able to put your GP38 onto Bakerloo line because it wouldn't know to mount a GP38 and make it available.
Yep.
If you selected Bakerloo line, you would only get things relevant to, or even peripherally relevant to. It's not like it would be, we'd still be able to manually influence that, but we still wouldn't put the GP38 in that list because the whole point here is to not mount everything. So what we've this new approach actually will make it to where it more intelligently knows what there is. Will let you select anything without having to load it, but then only load it if you actually then try and drive that train. Then it will mount that DLC and make that thing available. I think that's where they're heading. Once I can have a better conversation with the engineer, I'll get a better idea. But it's a good thing. It means that it'll be fully automatic.
Once you've had that conversation, can you provide me with the information from that, and then we can pass it on to the players and keep them up to date with what's going on there. I will update the thread that is currently on the forums, which is the PlayStation 5 one, and we'll just add another section with what has currently changed. Obviously it is still a work in progress, but as everybody can obviously see, we are still working on it. Now, can we talk about updates, our upcoming updates, especially in regard to the preservation crew? We've talked an awful lot about how the orders changed, how things have gone through their first pass of testing. When is the first update due, and what will it contain?
So I don't have a date for the first update. I'm not going to make a promise for something I can't confirm yet. But what we do know is that it will looks like it will be the Peninsula Corridor, the MP15 and the MP36 will be in that first batch.
Yeah.
Those are looking the strongest so far in release. They have passed their first round of, oh, sorry, they've gone through their first round of QA. So Adam's actually on holiday this week. So when he comes back, he will then be able to review the tickets that have come back, and then I'll have a conversation with him, and we'll work out what's important to get looked at, and what's just misunderstanding perhaps or not relevant to be looked at. We'll then get some fixes done as needed, and then it'll go back through QA, and we're aiming to go and get those out as soon as possible, so that we can start this process of getting stuff out, and try and get what I'm aiming for is a regular frequency or cycle of releases. So it's not wait until it's all ready and get it out. It's not try and do big releases. We've talked in the past about do a little bit often. That's not quite what this is going to be, but it's going to be, right, this is a sensible package of all the San Francisco related content. Let's just, that's it, go, get it out. It's once it's ready to go. So we'll get that out, and that will be sooner. Again, I don't want to put any kind of time frame on it. I'm tempted to, but I don't want to, until Adam's reviewed the ticket list and told me when he'll get cycled through his team and when we can get it back through QA, and then we can get it released and it'll go. And meanwhile, then we've already, in fact, the next batch has already passed QA as well, or sorry, gone through. I say passed, I mean gone through a QA pass.
Can we talk about which ones have actually gone through their first pass?
I don't have that list in
front of me.
I know you've got that list.
To get the list? Yeah, I'll grab the list.
That list, yeah.
Now, I would like to make it very clear to everyone that this is a first pass. So there's a very good chance, like we said, that they could go back through. But as far as we are currently aware, the other upgrades, should we say, to go through their first pass include the East Coast Way upgrades, the Great Western Express upgrades. Oakville Subdivision is currently going through its first pass. Main Spessart has gone through its first pass, and Rosig Nord has gone through its first pass as well. So we have made some progress, definitely with QA getting through this list, especially when you look at where we were last week, 2 weeks ago.
I mean, none of that stuff had gone through QA, so that's all happened or completed in the time since last roadmap stream. So, it's a big step forward. And the next step is, like I said, is for Adam to review those things, and we're going to be prioritizing the San Francisco content as the first update block. And then we'll look at the next round, get those through and get those out. Meanwhile, QA are working through the other stuff that hasn't finished yet, and they're going to be working through that stuff. So there's now going to be a kind of a two prongs there of QA continuing their first passes. When a second pass comes in, they'll do the second pass and stop first passes. They'll get someone looking at the second passes or those things so we can get them out. In fact, they won't even stop, because it'll probably only bother a couple of the QA people to do these second passes while the rest focus on the first passes. So it's the goal here is to get something out every period at this point. Let's get the first one out before we start being a bit more firm on that.
Yep.
But we want to get stuff out on a regular basis, so that we can get not just yourselves used to seeing updates from us and us proving that we can do it, but also the team here used to this cadence of getting stuff out and not delaying it.
Now, some people might have noticed, obviously, Main Spessart and Rosig Nord are not on the list in the same order. They could very well move further up. It entirely
It's one
depends.
of the reasons I suggested at the beginning that the stuff at the bottom half of the list may change.
Yes.
Because we've already seen some evidence that stuff's gone through a bit faster.
Yeah. And then finally on that particular topic, we've talked about a rough time frame for when we can expect the first lot of updates. When can we expect all of them to be done, Matt? Because yes, we're talking very optimistically now, but we could fall back into bad patterns, and it could be another 12 months before they come out. Is that your plan? When can we expect them?
So it's our goal at the moment to get all of these done before we do the next update to the game.
Okay.
Yeah, without trying to imply when that might be or what that might be or anything like that. Before we do the next update to the game, we want these out. That's sooner rather than later. That's not 12 months. Because we don't want them hanging around. And we want to make sure that these fixes get out to everybody.
And do you value the preservation crew? How are they valued internally? Because obviously with it taking this long to get them out, it can feel a bit like we don't really put much value on the preservation crew and what they do.
Oh, we absolutely value what they do, and it's to everybody's detriment that there's the work that's been done, which is the team have put a lot of effort into getting these fixes done, and we just need to get them out. And everybody wants to get them out. So no, everybody, the whole team values what the preservation crew are doing, and it's just been an error essentially in prioritizing, and a naivety in terms of a number of failings in a number of areas that have meant that this stuff is being pushed away and pushed away. It's always a little push. It's never a let's do that in 6 months. It's just look at that next week. Let's look at that next week. And it's really easy to say I'll do that tomorrow, but you can very easily keep saying I'll do that tomorrow, and that's kind of what's happened here. So it's the end result is not good, and it's where we are. But this is where it's kind of take stock of where we are, and let's realize we can't keep doing this.
Yeah, absolutely, because I don't think we can keep having these streams where we keep talking about stuff where we haven't made progress, where we keep acknowledging that the players are frustrated, but we don't actually do anything to fix it. I think we definitely need to start delivering with what we're talking about.
We do. Absolutely. Words only go so far.
Exactly.
Actions speak much louder. So this is what I'm trying to get done, so that we can get this first round of fixes out as soon as possible, and then you start seeing some actions from this stuff. And once I think the first round of fixes are out, I should be in a stronger place to say, and here's this is the plan for the rest. Yeah. Subject to change, hopefully in terms of sooner rather than later, but here's kind of the plan for the rest. But I don't want to do that until I see this first one go through.
Yeah, and I think it's a real testament to the community, like with how patient they've been in terms of waiting for the preservation crew updates. I mean, you can understand why they're kind of at the end of their patience here with this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Totally. I mean, it's and like I said, I share it as well. I'm kind of annoyed it's got this far.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, it's just, come on folks, let's just get this fixed. This shouldn't be hard. We just need to acknowledge and recognize the priorities of these things and get them in the right place. It's just happening now. So it's, I'm confident I can see things changing, but it's not a speedboat we're trying to turn. So it is taking a bit longer than I'd like, but it is getting there. I'm really happy with the changes that I'm seeing the team are making, and it's with some of the output, the immediate fix. But again, what I don't want anyone to get into the impression of, internally or externally, is down tools, fix the immediate problem and run away and then carry on with what we were doing before. Yeah. Because that doesn't solve the problem. That just papers over the cracks. And what I want is a process where the preservation crew feel empowered to make changes, knowing that stuff is coming out. Yeah. And then they revel in, once the changes come out, they revel in the fact that you guys are like, oh, this is amazing, we love this stuff. That really, and that empowers them to then go ahead and make more awesome changes to content later on. So it works as it builds up. It creates actually a really nice momentum.
So I was going to say, actually, is it quite demoralizing for the team? Because I think in the previous streams, Adam's obviously answered the questions very well, but it's got to be very disheartening for them, putting in all that effort, putting in all that time, doing this lovely stuff that they know the community are going to like, and then never seeing it.
Yeah, no, I know. I've spoken to some of the team, and they're demoralized is probably a harsh word for it, but it could get there.
Yeah.
But I know they're disappointed.
Yeah.
And they're keen to sort of say, well, why can't that stuff get out? Why can't you fix it, Matt?
Yeah.
Get it out. I mean, it's so much like talking to you. Just fix it, Matt. What's going on?
Yeah.
And they're right to say that. So this is what we're trying to do here. But I want a right solution that solves this, so that we have an empowered preservation crew that are motoring through, because they're actually working really fast now. They're really, really competent team. Mm-hmm. And there's been some great stuff in there, and there's just need to get this stuff out.
Now look, this has been a bit of a it's been a bit of a tough roadmap for you, and we've asked some really we said we were going to have a frank conversation, and I think we've definitely done that.
Frank has definitely visited the stream.
Yes, yeah. As someone said, can we have a more upbeat one after this? I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can find a nice chill one after this. Matt's going to need it. So there
is one other topic that I wanted to actually raise.
I was going to ask, are we allowed to talk about the thing?
I think we should talk about the thing.
Right, let's talk about that then. Obviously, we've talked about the progress that we've been making. We've talked about the processes that we're improving. We've talked about the steps we're taking to make QA better. What is the thing?
So I alluded to this a little while in a previous stream where I said there were, and again another one of stream very similar to this one, and I said that we were looking at other ways of trying to improve the situation as well. And I know that there are a number of people in the community that want to help.
Yep.
It's just like, well, how can we help you get this stuff through?
Yep.
That is by some form of an open beta. And that's what we're looking at doing. Now, there's an awful lot of processes and mechanics that I need to get figured out.
Yep.
So we're not there yet. So I'm not announcing we are doing an open beta. I am saying this is the direction that I definitely want us to head into. And I'm supported by my boss as well. In fact, it was his idea, being completely honest.
Yep.
And we want to, so what we want to do is so the goal here would be to come up with a Steam branch that anyone can opt into, that they can, which will have all of our up-to-the-minute fixes. So it may be completely broken. This is the nature of a beta. It'll have all the up-to-the-minute fixes that haven't necessarily gone through QA yet, so that you can then provide feedback. Now, the challenge is we need a way that you can provide that feedback to us. Mm-hmm. So that we can manage that, and we can make sure that your feedback is heard, recorded, and responded to. And we, once we've got process in place, then we can, we'll be in a better place for dealing with that. So, all I wanted to say here is,
go on.
Well, all I wanted to say in here in particular was, this is a direction that I want us to move into. And this is what we're working towards right now.
Yeah. Now, a couple of questions that will have come straight off the bat from that. Is an open beta early access?
No. So open beta would be specifically for testing fixes. So early access is what a closed beta team do.
Yep.
So a closed beta team, which is an invitation-only group, and I've literally taken on a new person just today. So there's new people joining it all the time. Mm-hmm. But our closed beta group are people who have access to DLC before it releases, and they provide us with, and they also know what we're making as well, so that they can provide us with, not just playable player feedback, but also they provide us technical feedback, documentation, reference material, guidance, and input on how we should make it, and so forth. So we look at that. So that's essentially the closed beta, and then the open beta will then be done, and all it is essentially it's the preserved crew work plus any other bug fixes that we do. So anytime we fix performance, things like that, we can put them into the open beta, because it doesn't matter how many QA people we throw at this problem. Yep. Someone earlier asked, can you just throw more money at this? The answer is not really. Not every problem can be solved like that, because the way the machine works, you can't just spin the wheels faster. So
now, obviously, this isn't going to be a perfect solution, because it can only be done on Steam, and sometimes
it can only be done on Steam.
It can only be done on Steam. So sometimes there are going to be console-specific problems that we just cannot include as a part of this.
Yep.
But could we use as a hypothetical situation today? We announced that obviously we'd made progress with the London Commuter issues. Would that be something that would end up on the open beta?
Yeah.
And everybody could make sure
the
it's
Sherman
working.
performance fixes I've mentioned, the DOS memory leak problem, crashes that are not console specific, anything preserved crew in terms of doing upgrading of the everything they've done would be potentially on there. We're talking a lot of specifics, but I do want to just caution that This is the direction we want to move in. We have a number of hurdles to get over.
Yes.
But we are making it a priority to try and get through those hurdles and come up with something, because, the sooner we get it in place, if we were to put some fixes up today, and again, we're not, if we were to put some fixes up today and then you played with them for a month, then QA would have very little left to test.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, I'm not saying that those are the example timescales. What I'm saying is that we get this system out there and we make it work, which won't happen immediately. We'll learn and evolve the right way of doing this, that we take on your feedback correctly. Then QA's workload drops to where suddenly these become much smaller jobs, because, and not only that, because potentially there are hundreds, thousands of people looking at the open beta. You will see things that our QA team won't do, because if they throw 50 or 100 people at this, which we won't at the moment, then they still won't necessarily see the range of problems that maybe all the different play styles and so forth that everybody else will see, or literally you'll be playing on the open beta and you'll run an older piece of content which we wouldn't even have thought to test because we hadn't appreciated the linkage, and you'll be like, oh, all the shadows have gone funny on this route. Oh, so we'll have a look at it. Oh, it was that change we made on that route over there somehow has caused shadows to go wonky on that route. And that sort of thing is the sort of thing that would have got missed without something like that open beta. So it's I'm really, really excited by this, really hyped by it.
Absolutely, there's a lot of potential for it. I think there are a couple of things we do need to be clear on, which is obviously that this is not going to mean that every tiny little thing that gets picked up will get fixed. It just means that you're going to perhaps be much more aware of some problems quicker.
Exactly. I mean, we'll be really clear when we launch the open beta. We'll be really clear about our expectations and what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, how we want to do it, and then you can make a decision about if it's something you want to, use or not. It'll be, I think, done right. This could be really cool.
I agree, and I think that the open beta, when we're ready to talk about it perhaps in a bit more detail, that warrants its own stream, so we can discuss and we can have those conversations with the players about what we expect.
Show how it works.
Exactly.
Meg Bean Kid just said, can't you just give your routes a jolly good telling off and stop them misbehaving? My answer to that, Meg Bean Kid, it doesn't work with you, so why would it work with the routes?
Hey, if giving it a good telling off worked, I'd have fixed everything by now.
I'd be perfect. I get told off all the time.
So look, I think that's a really good place to end the stream tonight, with something a bit positive. And look, thank you so much for answering the questions as openly and as honestly as you have. I know that they weren't easy, and I know that I've been grilling you a lot lately. I'm not going to promise I'm not going to do that anymore. But yeah,
I am expecting you to continue exactly what you have been doing until we have fixed it.
Oh, I will. I really will. I can promise you now, I will not stop harassing you until this problem is fixed. So, yeah. No, thanks for joining us, everyone. Like I said, we appreciate that this was a bit of a heavy stream, so we will try and get something in this week. We've got something nice this week. We've got the expansion pack this week. That's a nice one.
We've got the expansion pack Thursday.
Yeah, we've got the expansion pack Thursday.
I'm on with JD doing the expansion pack.
That's a nice one.
So I'm looking forward to that. That should be fun.
Yeah, and I'll see if we can get something nice and chilling next week, just for everyone to go.
Yeah, let me do a 6-hour Let's Play stream. There you go.
You know nice what, I will, yeah. A 6-hour Let's Play, that sounds about right. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. And like I said, I will promise you that I will keep on top of Matt with all of the stuff we talked about tonight. So yeah, goodbye from me.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.